It's time we get to the truth about the media. I'm Stephen Eubanks, and I'll be providing an overview of research of bias polarity in the media. Surprisingly to myself, not all the information that I have read agree that there is bias in the media. While some did blatantly state that there is certainly bias in the media, others pointed to more personal perceptions of bias due to belonging or beliefs. What can be concluded through all this information is that bias is a real thing in today's media. Whether or not it is perceived due to certain factors, or if it is truly a misrepresentation of information. I would like to pose a question to you all that even if bias is merely based on perception, is perception not merely a reality? The first two articles that I have read discuss bias in the media as a perception rather than a truth. The article Hostile Media Perceptions in the Age of Social Media from Routledge outlined a study conducted in order to assess whether following politicians' social media feed is directly linked to hostile media perceptions by evoking emotional responses in the audience. The study was specific to the Trump and Hillary campaign and was conducted using two waves of online surveys. The first, in order to determine whether or not individuals follow candidates on Twitter or Facebook, and whether or not this following evokes certain emotions. The second, in order to determine if feelings associated with following a candidate on social media would cause the individual to feel as if certain news was biased. The key findings in the study were that yes, of course, following a candidate on social media can and does evoke a range of emotions within followers, including but not limited to anxiety, enthusiasm, and anger. The study also found that anger and enthusiasm were the two emotions that, when evoked, were related to predictions of media bias. The article Biased Press or Biased Public by Albert C. Gunther posed a significantly different reason for a perception of bias in the media. This was a two-survey study completed through phone call and a paper-based survey intended to investigate what the title says. Whether or not involvement in the membership within certain social groups could cause a perception of biased media coverage. Gunther described that membership in political, religious, ethnic, or social groups carries with it attitudes, beliefs, and personal stake in group concerns. This measure of involvement, sometimes called ego involvement, is associated with a strong and enduring sense of self. It is not just a strong sense of self and belonging that Gunther feels could cause perceptions of media bias, but also that personal experience can also play a role. Findings from the two surveys support the idea that all these factors previously discussed do increase the likelihood or perceived media bias. The last several articles I investigated did agree that yes, there is bias within the media. Are biased media bad for democracy? By Stephanie Wolton did, however, state that yes, there is bias found within the media reportings, which is contrary to the other information I have discussed thus far. Stephanie outlined findings from research conducted using a game involving different government policies and differing viewpoints. Findings showed that media bias does reduce the quality of journalism and fosters distrust due to presentation bias. However, it is not necessarily bad for democracy. Thank God for democracy. The article CNN versus Fox, Why Two Cable Networks Are Obsessed with Each Other from the Washington Post discussed possible reasons for non-objective reporting happening within both networks. Both networks have acknowledged that highly emotional news is the kind that travels furthest on social platforms such as Facebook and Twitter, and therefore feel the need to evoke these emotions, mainly anger, through jabs made at one another. Most of the blame in this article is directed towards Fox due to their popularity and praise from President Trump and high ratings. As Paul Farhi wrote, Fox's shadow is enormous. Regardless of reportings of the exclusion of biased opinions, should the public not be discouraged by the fact that they cannot receive objective information from the two largest platforms? The most enjoyable article that I found by Kent Stern, titled Former NPR CEO, opens up about liberal media bias. In this in this article, Ken explains that only 1 in 5 people working in the media are conservatives. He also explains that there is indeed bias within media reporting, but this is not an overt effort to report it in a biased manner, but rather is due to a groupthink mentality. Ken was the former CEO of NPR and decided that he would spend some time with conservative groups in order to assess their political views and opinions. Through this process, Ken met and spent time with many different groups, including hunters, evangelicals, remote villages, along with many others. Pleasantly surprised as his preconceived notion of these groups were proven inaccurate. One area Kent spent time One area Kent spent a significant amount of time was with the depressed communities in Ohio and Kentucky. Most of the people in these communities are blue collar workers suffering from unemployment, opiate, or alcohol abuse due to closing mills. Ken realized that these individuals looked at the media and saw stories that did not reflect the world that they knew or fears that they had. This article suggested that many of our citizens are not being represented or supported within current media reportings, and as a consequence, according to Kent, it is a public that is a long-term loser. There is bias found within media reportings, whether it is an actual causation of media reporting, intentionally or not, or if it is a perception due to personal factors. CNN and Fox appear to play into emotions such as anger and enthusiasm and have been proven to evoke feelings of bias. Group involvement and personal experiences can cause both an issue of groupthink within reporting professionals and feelings of skepticism among individuals. Fortunately, thus far, biased media has not posed any threats to our current democracy. What do you think? Is media bias a perception based on following social media groups' involvement, or extreme feelings of anger, or is it a real thing found within the media reportings?